1. Hi everyone, my name is Mark. I'm 21 and live in Toronto. I think something has attached to me in the beginning of the year because I keep seeing and hearing things that are not supposed to be happening. The scariest part is that I think I'm too used to it. The worst it was when I was stuck in quarantine with my brother and we both started getting creeps. We lived with a middle-aged lady with a small child. They rented us their basement, and I lived there from February to July. At first it was loud footsteps, noises, and clunks from upstairs late at night. I know for a fact it's not the lady who rented us her basement because A. It kept happening even on days when she was leaving to visit her mother. B. They go to bed at around 9:30 p.m. and wake up at around 7 a.m. And C. Their bedrooms were on the second floor of the house. The noises started at around 2 a.m. and continued until sunrise. It was loud, heavy footsteps on an old, creaking parquet. There were also weird noises of occasional furniture being dragged around. The weird thing is, I keep seeing an old, tall man and a small little child. I cannot really pinpoint the child's gender, but the child gives me more creeps and shivers. It has a tendency to appear out of nowhere in my peripheral and just startle me. I think it thinks it's fun or something. The old man is just there. He only once spooked me. I was talking on the phone with my friend while doing laundry. I was coming back into the house, and I usually keep my eyes on the floor, since the laundry room is quite cluttered to not trip. The worst thing happened when I raised my eyes and he stood there looking at me. My heart almost stopped. I fall back and couldn't breathe for a moment. After that, he was just in the background. So my brother also started experiencing weird shit. We were both in our beds already. It was around 2 a.m. when he asked me to go check the door since he thought he heard someone knock. I went in there and checked the door. It was left unlocked. I thought, oh well, maybe we forgot to lock it. I went back inside the house and suddenly the lights turned on in the hall. To say I was scared shitless is an understatement. I ran to my brother to ask if he was messing with me. He said no, and maybe that's me who forgot to turn it off. But I'm not stupid. I always turn off the lights, it's a habit of mine. The next instance was when we were both watching Deadpool in the living room, when the lights in my brother's bedroom turned on their own. To make it creepier, the door opened slowly with a creak. I thought maybe it's just the wind, even though the door was closed shut. He went in to check and found nothing. He left the room and then the door suddenly closed behind him. After that, we decided it was enough. He moved in with his friend and I returned to my parents' house. But even now, I keep noticing the presence. It's not as noticeable as before, but the child keeps appearing in the darkness out of nowhere. I think the old man is still here, if his tall, dark shadow is anything to go by. I was passing by the kitchen at 3 a.m. when I saw an unnatural shadow blocking the light from the window. I fucking cried and cried for my mom. Can ghosts attach themselves to people for no damn reason? I don't think I have any tall, old dead relatives, unless it's some old ancestors. And I don't have any dead children relatives nor friends. I just want them to leave me alone. 2. I've never been a stranger to the paranormal. I lived from the time I was 9 months old to a little while after I started my first year of high school in a haunted house. Not only that, but my mom's side of the family, and inherently me, are sensitive and experience psychic abilities. I started developing them during my tween years, and had been for a while when we went to Galveston, Texas on vacation. I went there knowing it was a ghost town. My family's always liked traveling to places that could double as a learning experience for me and my 2 brothers. This was no different. For those of you who don't know, a large hurricane swept through the island in the early 1900s, taking out the majority of the population and their buildings. Our interest was piqued by the paranormal stories that resulted. Where a Walmart now stands used to be an orphanage that was taken out by the Great Storm. Children were strung together with their nuns on safety rope, as not to lose each other. Then, after the waters settled, they found a dead body and just kept tugging until they had a whole stand of dead bodies. My mom purchased a cheap ghost app for her phone. It supposedly indicated where a spirit is with a radar, and if you get out your camera, they show you its silhouette. This part I never really thought much of, but then my mom purchased an add-on that lets you communicate with the ghost. Being that my mom never has her location turned on, these statements were eerily accurate. It said things about drowning, mostly, and some names. We also stayed on a hotel room across the road from the beach. Nothing really happened here because we agreed to not trifle with the spirits where we slept. But I still had trouble getting to sleep at night. On the outside property was fair game, though. We had just agreed hours ago that we were done with this type of thing for the rest of the trip, but she disregarded that promise. We had been at the community center, I believe it was, and we had run into something claiming to be a demon, and that was the end of that. Or it should have been. Instead, my mom walked ahead of us and wandered into the empty pool area. She had the app out again, looking around for anything. As she opened the gate and wandered through, though, it slammed closed midway through, scraping her hand and lower arm. After that, it seemed satisfied. There were plenty of other entities to pester us, though. We went to this old home-turned-museum one afternoon. It was said not to be haunted, but we didn't believe that for a second. We all went through at our own pace. I was alone and swore I kept seeing a woman wandering who was never there when I looked at her, but my mama always shut me down when I spoke of it. Other worthwhile things happened, though. I found out later that my mom and brother had walked past a painting of a pouty young boy. They had made the mistake of mocking the picture, calling him the toddler Donald Trump, which in my family is more of an insult. My family is typically way kinder than that, and I made them apologize before exiting, but he didn't seem to accept. Before we started the tour, they gave us each a sticker to place on our shirt to show that we paid. On the outside wall there was a bulletin board intended to hold all the stickers people had taken off. I was the last one out. Just as my family had, I started working the sticker off my shirt to put it up, when the door slammed shut behind me. I jumped and left the sticker on my shirt, shouting, "I'm keeping my sticker," at it. I had the sticker for years after that, but I don't remember what happened to it. No staff or guests had been around but us, and we were all outside. There was no breeze present, or at least not one big enough to shut the heavy doors that open inward. In the sake of my younger brother, my parents attempted to make up an excuse, but even they couldn't, so we just rode in silence. Then there was the graveyard. They are a favorite walking place for my mother and I, and we just had to stop by one before going home. These ones were especially cool since they had above-ground graves, since the dirt was more sand than dirt, and they didn't want them to be washed out. Being above ground, the sentiment doesn't really make sense, but I didn't ask questions. Some were closed coffins, and others were little shed-like buildings, bearing windows on the doors. My mom took several pictures of the inside of them. Several were blurry or twisty, and others showed an actual face peering back at us. The best proof I'd say we got there was accidental. We were no longer at the graveyard, and instead at the mall area, walking around little shops, looking for a souvenir. There was an art gallery. For a reason I'm not sure of, my mom whipped out her phone and took a picture looking into the lobby of a small art gallery. It came back with a clear image of an army general glaring back at us. We later went in and found there was no painting of the man we had seen. We had taken other pictures in the shops. There were another lethal ground for the residents during the storm, and there was plenty of paranormal pictures other people captured to prove it. That was the only good one we got, though. We also chatted with some store owners. They all had stories, but I no longer remember them. Though those don't matter because they aren't my stories to share. And there must have been some importance, being that they left enough of a mark on me to remember all these years later. 3. Back between 2013 and 2014, I was helping my now stepbrother-in-law with his senior paper for high school. We were given all the equipment needed to pull off the project: cameras, microphones, audio recorders, ghost hunting equipment, all that jazz. Once we arrived in Exeter, Rhode Island, and talked to the locals long enough to find the lad school, we got right to work with running the cameras, audio recording, using different meters, and just trying to take in the history and let anything that wanted to manifest do so in its own time. We got some cool stuff the first night. A woman whispering in response to our question, "Is anyone with us?" And she said a nice breathy, "Yeah." Cliché and typical, I know, but we ate that up and pressed on. Out in the distance we heard what sounded like an old squeaky bike with a flat tire rolling down a gravel road. In the recording you could hear the f of the flat tire. We thought that was great because these things were happening so sporadically and was piquing our interest every time. We ended up cutting the first night short as we felt a major energy shift and didn't like the negative and just scary feelings we felt. The following morning we set off to get more on camera. Our EMF readers and EVPs are going off in the hospital and nurses area. We got recordings of screams and whispers. Decent stuff to press on more throughout the property, until I started to slow down and shift in my behavior and mannerisms, changed at the drop of a hat. My girlfriend at the time had given me a kiss to try to cheer me up and motivate me to keep going, because she knew how bad I wanted to make this paper the best thing ever. No sooner than we kissed did she pull away and wipe her mouth, saying, "Ew, you taste like those old cherry cough drops, like with the medicine in it. When did you get those? I didn't know you were sick." Once she said that, everyone stopped and turned around, and the cameras were on me. So I, of course, needed to explain I wasn't sick, and that I'm not yanking anyone's chain. This isn't for entertainment purposes, it's for educational purposes. My partner Mike said, "You don't look so good, bud. You feeling all right? You say you're not sick, but you're looking rough. You even got dark circles under your eyes, and you're pale." This started to weird me out, and I started to panic, because I wasn't understanding why they were saying this stuff about me. My girlfriend at the time, Haley, says, "I think something might be attached to you. How do you explain what's going on with you? We should go back to the hotel room for a bit and just review the footage." On our way to the hotel, my face gets a sharp pain in it, and my head is throbbing. A pain so awful I've never felt something so terrible in my life. Tears rolling down my face. I yell out that my teeth are killing me, and it feels like someone ripped my teeth out or something. The pressure was immense and just so bad that the hotel trip turned into a hospital trip. They ran x-rays and told me that I have a massive abscess right above my canine tooth, and it needed to be drained and possibly a root canal. I was given medicine to hold me over till I could get an appointment back home. Once back in the car, everyone turned to me and was in shock for that to have happened. To have a problem like that to seemingly come out of nowhere. And only after we went to this school where there were kids who have had their jaws broken, teeth pulled out, and faces broken is when I start feeling, looking, and tasting sickly and now have this major dental emergency. Keep in mind, I just got my braces removed, and my teeth health was at the top of its game. There's absolutely no reason for me to have had a massive abscess form to the point it needs to be drained, a root canal, with a cap to finish the job. To this day, we all believe that something attached itself to me, and since that trip I have a scar to prove it. Some additional information. There's a cemetery on the Ladd School property. It's in tribute to Dr. Ladd. But there's one extremely strange thing we noticed on the ground there. There were children-sized footprints on the ground, but they were like burned into the ground. You could clearly see the heel of the shoe all the way to the tip of the shoe. Each step killed the grass around it, and in their footprints appeared to be burned into the ground, and they led to a wooded area right toward what appeared to be a sewage manhole, except we believed it to be one of their underground tunnel systems. And I know there to be a patient who was brought out there and thrown into one of the underground tunnel manholes. I believe he went by the name of Gary. There is a newspaper cutout of him that could be found as well. They cut his head off and left him in the woods. His head was never found. 4. I'd like to tell you all about a couple of my paranormal experiences. Firstly, just for context, I am a 26-year-old female. When I was 20, I decided to be an idiot and play with the Ouija board with my little brother, who was 15, and some friends. Of course, we turned out all the lights and lit a candle. Also, I don't think this matters really, we rented a room at a sketchy hotel for this. Nothing too bad happened because we didn't play long enough. We asked if anyone was there, and of course, everyone thought someone else was moving the thing on the board, the planchette, to yes. Then at some point, the candle in the room went out. And that was enough for everyone to say, screw this, I'm out. So that was that. But this part matters for later. A little while after this happened, I was just laying down at around 3 or 4 a.m. My family and I have always been night owls when my brother Jack comes into my room freaking out, saying, "Haley, look at the back of my neck." Keep in mind that he is hysterical and not the type to make up stories or lie. Also, I saw this shit with my own eyes, on the back of his neck kind of down toward his shoulder, if that makes any sense at all. There were 3 raised red marks, like scratch marks. He said he was sitting on the computer, which, by the way he was sitting was completely against a wall at our kitchen table. Nothing could possibly have gotten behind him in the first place. It wasn't possible with how he was positioned. And it felt like someone reached out and scratched him from behind, obviously. The marks looked fresh. That's why I say raised. So this story is the first one, because I needed to establish that my stupid ass brought whatever the hell this thing was back with me from using that stupid Ouija board. The next happened a little while after the first story. I was dating my now ex-boyfriend, Chris. We were asleep one night. Everything was normal. All of a sudden, I wake up to Chris sounding distraught as hell and saying my name like he was terrified, while also grabbing my left wrist and pulling me up to him from the end of the bed. So I wake up to Chris catching me. I know this is going to sound like such absolute bull, but I know what I felt and saw. Something had started to drag me off the bed. It does not end there either. I only speak English. This is important to know. I'm going to try and explain the next part as best I can. It isn't something that felt very explainable at all, but it was scary as fuck, and should not have been possible. It may make no sense, but I'll try. When Chris pulled me back up to the top of the bed where I was supposed to be, anyway, I could feel myself saying things while not understanding any of it. As Chris would later tell me, it was not in English, which is all I speak. So I have this overwhelming presence of, this may sound cliché, but evil is the only word to describe this feeling. Pure evil. And I felt a slight smirk and sly grin on my face, while I'm saying something but thinking something completely different at the same time. This is why I said it's hard to explain. Just imagine being able to talk 2 completely different languages and voices at the exact same time. That's how it felt, and even my thoughts were messed up and felt like they were not my own. I only remember thinking something along the lines of, in a very cocky way, "They're so stupid. They don't even fucking know." Then I fell back asleep. That was it. I don't know how well I told this story, but I hope I was able to communicate one thing clearly enough. And that is just don't mess with Ouija boards. 5. I have 2 stories to share. Let me first start with explaining why most corner rooms in hotels are always the most haunted places. In our culture, we always believe that corner rooms must be avoided in any hotels, due to the fact that it's the least populated and visited area by humans, since they don't walk towards the end of the hallway often. Thus, spirits can have that space to themselves without much disturbance. Starting with my personal story. Back in 2017, me and my mother visited Korea and went to Taeju Island. We stayed in a pretty new hotel. It was spacious and big, and the price was rather cheap for a 4-star hotel. Upon our dismay, we were allocated the corner room. Thinking it was a new hotel, me and my mom brushed off any unpleasant feelings and checked into our room. It was pretty late at night, around 11 p.m. when we checked in. In Chinese beliefs, when checking into a hotel room, always knock on the door and politely tell any spirits inside, if there are, that we are merely staying for a few days and will not disturb them. Flush the toilet immediately upon entering, and also place our shoes in a messy manner. We did everything. However, upon entering the room, we felt really drained and uncomfortable. We received 2 keys in a card format. One for electrical usage in the room, one for the door key. My mother put the card on the table and we started unpacking. To our horror, after unpacking and wanting to go to the convenience store to buy some snacks, the keys have disappeared and were not on the table anymore. My mother immediately started blaming me for misplacing them, and we spent a good 20 to 30 minutes arguing while flipping the whole room for the key. When we were about to give up, the key sort of magically appeared at the same spot on the table again. No way we would have missed that it was right smack in the middle of the table. Also, we realized that the beverages in the fridge were all half drank. Not sure if the hotel staff didn't change it or if it was linked to anything supernatural. The feeling in the room was still particularly ominous, so we decided to check our asses out of the room. I called the receptionist hotline with the phone provided by them in the room, and all I heard were static sounds. In the end, we packaged everything and went down to the reception to request a room change. The next room we checked into didn't have any heavy or ominous feeling, as compared to the prior room, and we had a good and comfortable stay overall. The next story is from my friend, Giselle. Giselle went to Perth on a school trip, and was paired with Lindy to be her hotel roommate. Unfortunately, they got the corner room. Giselle was strongly against it as her dad is a medium, and has always advised her to stay away from corner rooms, or if the room made her feel uncomfortable. She immediately felt cold and uncomfortable in the room upon entering, but tried to shrug it off. Giselle and Lindsay turned the TV on, and to their dismay, everything that came up on the TV was horror shows. They started to feel creeped out because no matter how many channels they changed, it was all horror shows and previews. What broke the camel's back was when they checked out their water supply. They all received a full water bottle from the school. Since they had to compete in a choir competition, it was essential to finish the water at designated timings, and the water bottle only had half of the water left. Neither of them had touched or drank any of the water, but it was only half filled for both bottles. They were 100% sure and adamant that they received a full bottle of water. They were unable to change the rooms despite telling their teacher in charge. Thus, they packed their things and crashed in other people's rooms. It's weird how both of us encountered this water depletion in our potentially haunted rooms. Does it have any link to spirits? Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 5 True Paranormal Stories, episode 200. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories and sent in stories for use in this video. If you have a paranormal yourself you'd like to send in, then please do send it along to kingofthecities@gmail.com. Thinking of one of the stories there when they mentioned the graves, that obviously always gets me to thinking about poltergeist, and I remembered I was on a little search a few weeks back, and it's proving very difficult to find a box set of the Poltergeist movies on Blu-ray. And it's especially difficult to get the second one. I can get the first and third individually, but I can't seem to get the second, unless I get it imported from Germany, which would mean that they're kind of inconsistent in the packaging. Well, okay, with that little grumble, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.